So I love going to independent theaters, but every time I go to an independent theater, it feels like I'm going into a porno theater, depending on the theater. Like I think there's one that shows like international films in Santa Ana that I went and I saw. Good Night, Good Night.
Oh, you're
Mommy?
probably thinking of the Frida.
Yeah. I was
The
like,
Frida's a great theater. It's just really grungy.
Yes, but those are cool. Like I guess those are a lot of the theaters back in New York that would play like indie films were all like grungy, but high class, but like kind of charming in their sort of grungy sophistication.
Yeah, I mean, Frida's a great place to have a few beers and watch like a Neal Breen movie or something.
Who tries to shoot on film when he can.
I know. I remember that.
I was surprised.
Which one of his movies was shot on film? Was it Double Down?
I think only the first one. I think the first one was the only one.
I mean, Double Down looks like it was shot on film, and the rest look like they were shot on shitty digital. It's not like he knows how to use either a film camera or a digital camera, but
it's like his heart is it, and we should probably get started. But his heart's in the right place because he's like, oh, I pay my crew anytime I can. I tried to shoot on film, and then that became too expensive. So, you have to make sacrifices for your vision. I was like, wow, that's incredible. If you weren't a little bit sleazy, that'd be amazing.
If he wasn't a nutcase, that would be pretty admirable.
With that said, I've never actually sat down and watched one of his movies. I don't think it's something you watch like alone in the dark. You're just like, this is weird. You have to watch it with
you gotta watch it with
you
friends.
And Austin.
Yeah.
She went under the wheels. How perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And then today, you want to do that one again?
Yeah, I
choke over some
I'm
water
a little
there.
Congested.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
Shit, I can't say I'm. Hold on. I'm. Let's do it one more time.
Oh, welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe. That wasn't that much better.
There's like the slight hiccup, like, and I'm Gabe. That's fine. That's the one we're going with.
I'm Gabe.
Today,
okay.
Yeah, he is. If you don't know that already, like, what show have you been listening to? Why do we do that? Why do we introduce ourselves we're not Jason Derulo. Like, they know who we are. I mean, we're not going to stop introducing ourselves at the beginning. That just occurred to me now. Like, they should know who we are already.
Well, if someone's listening to this for the first time, they won't know who we are.
The Stan Lee rule. Every episode of a podcast is somebody's first episode.
That's right, true believer.
Excelsior.
Now time to steal money from people.
Rule number 1. Stan Lee Presents goes at the start of every single comic. That way I make money. I heard he was a nice guy, though. Like, he was
a nice guy to everyone except Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. I mean, Jack Kirby basically created the entirety of the Marvel Universe, and Stan Lee kind of just wrote the words.
Yeah, well, apparently Jack Kirby hated Stan Lee so much that in the New Gods, he created a character that was intended just to make fun of Stan Lee.
I can believe that. I haven't read enough of like the early Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stuff, and I hear that their run on Fantastic Four is the best. Until it got near the end of the series, and he's like, nope, I got a contract with DC Comics. I'm just gonna do art duties for this last year and keep plates spinning. And then he goes to DC and he creates Steppenwolf, and then they're like, that's a good villain for the Justice League movie, and the rest is history. But he also created Darkseid and all of these other things. And
I want to make a New Gods movie for DC and have it just be a farce.
Just be like,
so much
Orion
of New Gods
is just like
just
goofing
makes
off
no
the whole
sense.
time. Yeah, That's what John Byrne was saying when he like took over doing some writing duties for the New Gods. He's like, there are lines of dialogue in the New Gods that you can elaborate for like 10 years. Just a line of dialogue you can elaborate for 10 years. And Kirby was like, it doesn't matter, because like by that time the books weren't selling and they were about to fire him. So he, great artist, great plotter, not necessarily the best of writers.
Definitely not. I mean, the New Gods is this really complicated superhero universe with like all this stuff going on, and yet nothing ever happens. It's literally just plates spinning forever.
It's the back of the Thor comic books when they had the Legends of Asgard, and it's just like, this is this character, this is what he does. It's just like the New Gods in a nutshell, but just with like janky looking Superman because Jack Kirby was drawing him.
Yeah, and all they do is just kind of stand around, and then Orion is just like rage because he's angry all the time. And Mr. Miracle escapes from something at some point. Like, if my New Gods movie, Mr. Miracle would be the main character. Mm-hmm. And he would defeat Darkseid by escaping from something. Because that's his power. He can escape from anything. But it would be really stupid. Like, somehow he escapes from, like, a Chinese finger trap, and that is what leads to Darkseid's downfall. I haven't worked out the details yet, but that's how it's going to go.
Okay, I was gonna say, is it like a domino effect, or is it like he just like escapes from it, and all of a sudden Darkseid's like eye beams can no longer split the way they normally split, and it just like comes back in on him and like kills him?
I something more like the latter, not a domino effect, but like Mr. Miracle getting out of the Chinese finger trap directly like kills Darkseid.
So wait, because I know a little bit of it based off of the Superman cartoon, because obviously, like Bruce Timm and all of those guys, they're huge fans of the New Gods because they're all fans of Jack Kirby. So isn't Orion Darkseid's son, and Mr. Miracle is whoever the head of the New God, or the
High Father's son?
The High Father's son, yeah.
Yeah, they trade their sons as part of a peace agreement.
And then they freaking jacked that in the first Thor movie, because I guess Kenneth Branagh also happens to be a fan of the New Gods, too. Unless that's canon, quote unquote, in the comics, that Loki is like a frost giant.
I think that's canon. Well, I think that's also canon in like Norse mythology.
Oh.
That Loki is like half frost giant or something.
Half frost giant, half god, all mischief. There was something I was watching where it felt very much like they were just like taking from that stuff, like from like the mythology of like, oh, this person was, I can't remember it now, so that just like landed flat. In today's episode, we're talking about the Midnight Sky. George Clooney. We just need to redo this whole episode. This is all bad right now. Yeah, today we're going to talk about the Midnight Sky, as well as apparently the New Gods and Neal Breen and a whole number of different things. Are you still there?
Yep. I'm letting you dig yourself out of the hole you've created.
And sipping coffee. But yeah, what I was saying earlier was that I left my notebook that I was taking notes on for the Midnight Sky in the other room. So I'm going to have to wing some of the points of some of the things that I wanted to talk about on the movie. But yeah, like every episode, before we get started on that, Gabe, what have you been watching lately?
Okay, so lately I've been watching, I saw Pieces of a Woman, that movie that's like, oh, Vanessa Kirby's performance is transcendent, even though she looks like Benedict Cumberbatch in a wig. And, it's pretty good. I wrote a review about it for the website. It's a high witness. It's based on a play, so it's very acting driven, very dialogue driven. Vanessa Kirby, Shia LaBeouf, and Ellen Burstyn all do a really good job, but like each one of them has like a moment where they get really histrionic, or multiple moments in some cases. And I think those are the moments that like reviewers are like, oh wow, this performance is amazing, but they just come off so ham-fisted when you actually see the movie. And I think it's like the subtler in between stuff that they actually do really, really, really well, and is Like if I was to give any of them a golden statue, because I apparently have the power to give out golden statues, it would be for that, not for when they're screaming and crying. That said, just because it's based on a play, most movies that are based on plays feel like plays, and this one doesn't really, which is a very nice thing. The director, who's Hungarian, he's making his English language debut, and then the script and the play that the script is based on were both written by his wife. He's got some good cinematic ideas to kind of spice things up. There's like a 30-minute long take scene at the beginning of the movie, which is probably the technical high point. I think the entire rest of the movie like kind of struggles to live up to that, just because it's so it's just so out there and it's so well done. Although there are some like janky prosthetics, but yeah, that big one take scene is really impressive. It does manage to be cinematically interesting throughout the rest of the movie, although never quite to that level. The movie looks really good. One thing that's weird is, they have their opening where they set it up, then they have this 30-minute long take, and then they have the title card that says Pieces of a Woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's kind of a weird choice to put your movie's title card 30 minutes into the movie. And I was thinking, that kind of reminded me of Good Time, because I think the title Good Time comes in like 20 minutes in. Yeah. And the other connection with Good Time is that Benny Safdie is a supporting character in Pieces of a Woman. And it's weird to see him like thin and talking normally versus Good Time, where he's got some like, either he's like lost weight or he had some like facial prosthesis or something. And then I gotta talk like this. And he's like mentally handicapped in that movie. So yeah, it's just a weird change, because like I didn't recognize him at first. I was like, what the fuck is that? Is that Benny Safdie? The hell is he doing here? But yeah, it was him. And like Good Time, they bury the title card like way, way into the movie. But yeah, it's good. It's a high witness. The praise it's getting makes sense for the most part. I don't think Vanessa Kirby is necessarily better than Elizabeth Moss for what she did in The Invisible Man. Mm-hmm. But it's up there. It's up there. For sure. Yeah.
Well, I think Elizabeth Moss has a harder time, because it's like, oh, this is, not really seen as like high art cinema, quote unquote, as you like snort through your nose.
It is though.
Well, no, but like people won't see it that way, and so like the fact that Elizabeth Moss is able to add so much like nuance and power in her performance compared to a play where it's all dominated by performance and it's nothing but performance, and this person is hired and they have to go to these like extreme levels based off of like, this is gonna, based off of quote, this is Oscar bait unquote in it. Yeah, I feel bad for Elizabeth Moss, and I can see why they're like, oh, Vanessa Kirby's amazing in this and she's gonna be the one to win. It's like Elizabeth Moss has the uphill battle of a lifetime.
Seriously. So. I had one more comment to make, and I can't remember it now.
So, like, if you find yourself attracted to Vanessa Kirby, does that mean, like, you're somewhat gay for Benedict Cumberbatch as well? Is that, like, an easy parallel to make?
It's a possible parallel, yeah. Oh, one other thing. Pieces of a Woman is distributed by Netflix, and, you and I have taken our fair share of shots at Netflix this year. Yeah. But one thing I've noticed is, like, a lot of Netflix movies, they get very talented, a very diverse group of very talented people to helm a lot of their original content. Like David Fincher, the Coen brothers, Spike Lee, Cary Fukunaga, and so on and so on. And a lot of Netflix movies kind of look and feel the same, and they're all kind of whatever. I don't know if it's the fact that this guy's Hungarian or what, but it definitely has more. Pieces of a Woman definitely has more of a personality. It has like that. almost stereotypical, like, Eastern European, cool, controlled, methodical feeling to it. Which is different from how a lot of Netflix stuff feels, generally. Because, I mean, Netflix content always feels like it's made for an American audience, which in the case of, say, the old guard, it means it's edited to the point of incomprehensibility. But Pieces of a Woman feels more like this guy was able to implement his style in the movie without having it, get perverted into the Netflix house style in any way.
Right.
And it's like, based on what Netflix at least says, I think they seem to have the right intentions. Like, they are trying to give, these people as much creative control as they reasonably can. Mm-hmm. But I think they've just gotten lousy results with it so far, and I'm hoping it'll pay off more in the future. Because I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I feel like they have the right idea. It just happened to be the case that a lot of their stuff looks the same.
Yeah, well, like, I feel like there's, like, a certain group of people that really thrive working with and for Netflix, like Mike Flanagan with Gerald's Game. That's, it might have a similar look to other movies, but it's a unique premise, unique execution. And then, like you're saying, with Pieces of a Woman, I'm assuming that, like, if you're trying to break in for the first time and you're willing to, like, and you don't have an established style. Like, Cary Fukunaga does have a style based off of, like, True Detective, but he's still not a well-known director. So, Netflix gives him money and, creative freedom, and then he's allowed to make, Beasts of No Nation and, oh my gosh, the
Maniac.
The Maniac, I was going to call it the other purple thing series that he did. Like, I feel like if you're sort of mid-tier, not quite at the top tier where studios are just greenlighting all of your projects, then Netflix is a good stepping off point for you because you can, because they give you enough creative freedom, but they also give you a lot of money and you can really express yourself interestingly. Whereas, like, a lot of the top tier directors, maybe Netflix gives them too much freedom and, like, they need, like, a stronger someone else in the room to be maybe should we do this?
Don't
or should
even
we do
put
that?
those thoughts out into the world, Matthew. There's no such thing as too much creative freedom.
I guess that's right. Because, like, I keep going back to The Irishman, and, like, the more I think about it, I love watching The Irishman. I love the fact that, like, it's a slow paced movie, that it kind of focuses on an idiot, that it's like the hyper Scorsese movie when people think of, like, everything he does. So I keep going back to that, and, like, there are directors out there who get to kind of thrive when they have the freedom, or, like, Da 5 Bloods is, like, it's kind of, it's good amounts of goofiness, and sincerity, and it's, like, I love all that stuff, and I'm glad that Netflix is putting it out there for people to do that and have fun, and I like that they get to go crazy and things like that. But, like, I mean, I think, like, if we're talking about, because we were talking about Jack Kirby, and, like, DC gave Jack Kirby free reign, and it's like, well, maybe he should have had, like, a writer there to maybe punch up some of the dialogue, maybe another creative force to bounce ideas off of to make sure that things didn't spiral too much.
Yeah.
Because every time I watch these Netflix movies that are done by, like, the big name directors, if they don't turn out, like, kind of bland, then there's at least one point where it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe there should have been at least one other creative person to act as sort of like a counterbalance to keep them in. Because, like, look
that's
at
kind
Roma,
of the weird
for
thing
example.
is that they, like, it would make sense if, Netflix gave someone all this creative freedom and it was just this, like, spilling over of excess, and it was just way out of left field. But it's the opposite. Like, a lot of the times it's weirdly bland, which is, like, why? Yeah. Like, you would think, like, okay, a director gets complete creative freedom. If they screw up, it's because they went too far, not because they didn't go far enough. But oftentimes it seems to be the case where it's like they didn't go far enough. Like, my whole thing with Mank is, like, it kind of bland compared to a lot of Fincher's other stuff, which is weird. Because I don't think anyone could ever put Fincher and Bland in a sentence together, but that's kind of how Mank is.
Yeah, I guess I see what you mean. I don't know. It is kind of weird, and maybe it's this other idea of like I guess Fincher likes to have limitations on projects he makes because it allows creativity to thrive.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, the more limitations you have, the more creative you need to be. And that's where like some amazing visual effects have come from, is like, oh, we have limitations here. But then you look at other things where they have like no limitations on it. And instead of being something that's really creative and unique, it just ends up looking generic. Like if you look at a lot of action movies, you know, the more money they have, you can have someone talk about like, oh, look at the poly count, look at how many trees and everything are fading. But it's like, it's great that you have all of this power, but like, we want something that looks unique or interesting. We want something that looks creative, and it's like, oh wow, that's.
Well, I mean, cinema's greatest minds are typically not making action movies, unfortunately. Yeah, action movies tend to be pretty studio driven, where it's just like, okay, we've prevised all the scenes, we just need you to work with the actors and put the cameras in place.
Yeah. But I mean, like, even to a greater level, like when Robert Rodriguez was doing El Mariachi, you know, he didn't have a lot of film to do takes on, and so everything that's in that movie is edited super tightly, and you know, he's the forebearer for what we see in action movie cutting now. But that wasn't necessarily because he wanted to cut that way. It's like it was just a necessity, and I think that's where a lot of like the best creativity comes from, the most interesting things come from. Then again, I love Goodfellas, and Goodfellas is all about that Martin Scorsese excess. So
that's right.
You know,
it's his best movie, other than Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Also, the dirty little secret about Robert Rodriguez is that he's not that good. He isn't. He's like, El Mariachi was good for what it was, but like, a lot of his movies suck. Sin City sucks. Spy Kids sucks. Alita sucks.
That's like your opinion,
Machete
man.
sucks. Machete Kills sucks. Like, yeah. He's made a lot of bad movies, and whenever people talk about him, like, well, what about El Mariachi, man? Desperado. And I'm like, what about everything else he's ever done that's bad?
So here's my hot take on Robert Rodriguez. He is a filmmaker that I find more interesting as a person talking about filmmaking than as his like movies put out, because
because the interviews I've seen with him, he's very charming.
Yeah, he's charming in interviews, but also like his method of making movies, you know, he makes them how he wants to make them, using his own studio in his own area, and whenever he needs to, he will like invent something else. So like with Sin City, he was like, oh well, how can I here's the other thing, he also tends to ruin Hollywood for like 10 years, like for like every time he comes up with a new quote revolutionary thing, because you know, he shot Sin City for the most part all on green screen. You know, they did all the color correction and everything and added everything in digitally. So many people in Hollywood saw that and were like, that's a good way to make movies. That for like 5 years after that, all we had were really shitty backgrounds. And then like it's gotten better, but there's still a whole lot of, oh, we'll just shoot it on green screen and fix it in post later. But like for the time, I remember that was amazing. Like, oh wow, you can actually make a movie even if you don't have anything. And then for like the independent people who are just learning After Effects and things like that, it was like, oh, we can make a bigger movie. Granted, you get things like Twisted Pair that are using that same technology but don't understand like the fundamentals of how reality works. And even in Sin City, like some of the stuff is like it all looks super fake, but that's, you know, afterwards Robert Rodriguez can go and say like, oh yeah, but that's the point. It's supposed to look hyper realistic, you know?
I mean, I hate Sin City, but I know for a fact that a big part of that is Frank Miller is not a very good writer, or at least he wasn't at that time in his career. So I can't lay all the blame on Robert Rodriguez, but at the same time, Sin City is a very bad movie.
Well, and Robert Rodriguez, again, like Robert Rodriguez's projects all come under budget. You know, he always gets a high-powered cast to make cameos. And, like, when he talks about filmmaking, it all seems really interesting. But just like in the episode of The Chef Show, like, Jon Favreau just looks at the camera and he's like, he's full of shit. It's like, yeah, that's true. Like, he kind of is, because, sure, it's great that he, you know, El Mariachi, like, made it for $700 plus a borrowed camera, and he ended up making millions off of it. And, you know, Sin City revolutionized things. It's like, but yeah, like, how often are you going to go back and, like, watch, like, his older movies? Like, Spy Kids is fun for, like, little kids, but, like, all of the visual effects look shitty. Like, it's hard to watch those movies. Like, Shark Boy and Lava Girls somehow getting this resurgence as, like, oh, I loved it when I was a kid. And it's like, really?
Ugh.
The movie looks like crap.
Yeah.
And, like, his behind-the-scenes features are great, too, but...
Everyone always remembers the insanity from Spy Kids, which was the fun part. I think they forget how, like, not good it is between the stuff that's really insane.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I remember it because I think that was my first introduction to Carla Gugino, I still can't say her name, but I was like, oh, she's the mom from Spy Kids. Fast forward to Sin City, and you're like, oh my god, it's the boobs from the mom from Spy Kids. What the hell? So... And then in Bly Manor with her fake American accents. But anyway, what else have you been watching lately?
So the other thing I watched recently is The American Friend. It's a 1977 German-American movie from Wim Wenders, which is based on Ripley's Game. It's the third book in the Talented Mr. Ripley series, starring Dennis Hopper as Mr. Ripley. Ooh. And Bruno Ganz, who's probably best known for Angels Over Berlin and playing Hitler in Downfall. It's really good. It's a high witness, low shiny.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a very 70s thriller where it's just like, it's tense, but in a very effortless way, as opposed to, like, it doesn't rely on music or it doesn't rely on anything that we associate with thrillers now to create tension. And it's really interesting to watch based on that alone. But it's a beautiful looking movie. The performances are really good. Dennis Hopper's always a lot of fun. I know the ending of the movie is a little, like, the last 30 minutes are kind of messy, but I know that the book Ripley's Game also was criticized for having kind of like a messy final act. So it's just, I think it's more an issue with the material than the movie itself. But yeah, it's great. I liked it a lot.
Interesting.
And I think the other thing that's interesting about it is that, like, the relationships between all of the characters are interesting because they're so just messy. Like, there's nothing about the movie in terms of how people interact with each other that's, like, clean and neat and can be perfectly encapsulated in, you know, a phrase. Like, everyone has these complicated, messy relationships with each other that are, like, they like them, but they hate them, and I don't know. It's just really interesting to watch them play out and the ways that they intertwine and stuff.
So I don't know anything about the books, but I feel like I've been watching a lot of, like, book to movie adaptations that some do better than others, and like you were talking about the messy relationships between them, and like in some books, you know, an author will go on like a really long, like, multi-page rant about, like, this is John Jacobs. John Jacobs' relationship to this character is that they were both born, blah, 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 blah. But then, you know, they had a really bad falling out. And when they had this falling out, John Jacobs slept with this person's wife. And for that reason, our main character always resented him and blah, 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 blah. And I find it interesting how, Jacobs. Like... Yeah, I don't know.
This is John Jacobs Jingleheimer Smith. And his relationship
well, no, that's what he calls
to the main character penis, is that his name is my name, too.
But like something like that in a movie, when they transfer it over, they have to communicate all of that either in like a brief conversation or just like a look. And like the really bad adaptations, they'll have like a side character be like, oh yes, John Jacobs Jingleheimer Smith has the same name as our main character, and therefore that's why they are at odds with each other. And and they've been at that for years. But in like a good movie adaptation, you know, literally everything is just under the surface. You get it through actors looking at each other, you know, camera placement to see who has power, and like one or two lines of dialogue that work on multiple levels. Mm-hmm. So like I always think of that when I watch a movie, especially a movie that it looks like it's very obvious where the chapter breaks are, where it's like every 5 minutes they have to change the chapter break. And so like I think about that anytime it's like, oh, this is based off of a movie, or this was based off of a book. It's like, okay, because in the book they have like pages and pages and pages to elaborate on this thing, but how's the director truncating this into smooth operation? So
it's I mean, The American Friend is so effortless in its construction. Like with a lot of movies, you can kind of see the machinery of the film working behind the scenes. With this, you can't. It's all so like just so smoothly done. Everything feels very organic. And
that's always,
you know, like,
that's awesome.
I would say the messiest relationship in the movie is, you know, Tom Ripley and then Bruno Ganz's character Jonathan. Their relationship, which is pretty indirect for most of the movie, and even more complicated because it's indirect, and how that evolves is, I think, presented really well and fleshed out really well, where it doesn't lose any of the strangeness or any of the nuance, but they never have to explain anything to you.
Yeah. That's really cool.
What have you been watching lately?
Only two real things of note. The first one I'll kind of skip by quickly. I rewatched Cowboys and Aliens.
Oh, that movie! I hate that movie.
I remember when it first came out, I was super disappointed by it because I thought it was going to be kind of like campy, humorous fun. But I rewatched it, and there were a lot of things that worked for me. So I was like, okay, cool. I've been on like a Jon Favreau, Harrison Ford kick lately. So I was like, okay, you know, it was like, I feel like Favreau's movies and television are only as good as the crew around him. And so he had like Matthew Libatique doing the cinematography, and the movie kind of looks pretty good. And, you know, like Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford. He's like pretty good in everything, even if what he's in is kind of goofy and corny. So it was fun seeing him in there. And there's a lot of like actors that I like in the movie. Like Clancy Brown makes an appearance in there. Sam Rockwell's in there. Who else? Keith Carradine is in there for brief parts. It's like, what the hell is Keith Carradine? I didn't even know he was still alive. Yeah, it's I remember I was hoping it would be like as amazing as the first time I had seen Iron Man, and I think enough time has passed that I can be like, yeah, it's fine. You know, it's kind of goofy and stupid, and it's, you know, it's a Western with aliens. It's dumb, and it's not trying to be anything. It's not trying to rise to the occasion. It's like, this is a popcorn movie. It's big budget, you know, good special effects, good animatronics. You know, it's fine. It's solid.
What's with this weird Jon Favreau thing you've been on ever since we talked about The Mandalorian?
Because I think like everything else that he's done, I kind of enjoy. And even that first episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian is like, it's very Jon Favreau-y. He's such a meat and potatoes director, but he's really good with his actors. There's a lot of like improvisation, which, you know, can be hit or miss, but like in something like Iron Man 1, it worked to the advantage because that's the movie directly responsible for Robert Downey Jr. being $1 billion, I don't know, actor or whatever.
Commodity.
And then, you know, Doolittle. Yes. And then Doolittle ruined all of that. But like like I said before, when I first saw him in Daredevil, I was like, oh, hey, that's great. I love Foggy Nelson in this movie. He's the best part of this movie. And then in the director's cut, he's in it even more and he's even better. So I've always kind of been like, all right, who is this Jon Favreau guy? And like, I think like the fan base has kind of ruined it, where I used to be like, yeah, I'm a fan of his because he's, you know, he puts out decent stuff. He's a geek. He seems to like geeky stuff. His, you know, none of his movies are that dramatically stakey. Like, you know, it's like all of his movies are pretty breezy to watch. Like even in Cowboys and Aliens, where Daniel Craig's wife is like brutally murdered by aliens, and he's like trying to get his memory and like fight off the alien horde. it's still kind of breezy, you know. Harrison Ford's making a lot of jokes. There's a kid with a dog, and they're like shooting people, but it's fun. So I just I've been wanting to rewatch Cowboys and Aliens specifically because I was watching the Half in the Bag review, and both Jay and Mike were like, "Yeah, we liked this," and I was like, "Did I miss something? Like, this movie was stupid, right?" And I watched it again, and I was like, "Yeah, it is still kind of dumb," but everyone in the movie is like giving their all to make it feel as legitimate as possible. So I appreciated that, but take a break from Jon Favreau movies for a little while. So watch some other stuff, like I'm back on a Spielberg kick again.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Stalker.
That's the one I'm carving out because it's so long. Because I stumbled past it, and I'm gonna watch it soon. So maybe we'll do like a Stalker cast. I don't know, but I am gonna watch it soon because I'm gonna have a moment where I'll be able to have like 18 uninterrupted hours, and so I'm definitely gonna watch Stalker and then probably work my way through Lord of the Rings again for my yearly watch. But yeah, the only other thing I saw was Doctor Sleep, and yeah, it's I watched the theatrical cut, and it's a witness. Yeah, there's some things I really liked about it. There's some things I wish it had been done differently. That's another one, like, where I'm watching the movie and I'm like, I can tell it's based off of a book because the way that events happen in it, it feels like, all right, every 5 minutes we're changing perspective. Every 5 minutes this is happening. Every 5 minutes this is happening. I also understand why people hate Stephen King endings after watching the movie. Like, Mike Flanagan did his best to kind of like change the ending for the better, and it kind of works, kind of doesn't. But your favorite, the Tremblay kid, is in there. I want to call him Ethan Tremblay. I don't know if that's his actual name. But he's in there, and I've noticed him popping up a lot more recently. But yeah, his appearance in there is pretty fun. So those of you who have seen the movie will no doubt know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's definitely at least worth a viewing. And then whenever you watch it, I'd be interested to hear your opinion on it. So
okay,
I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah, that's my Stalker that I have to carve out like a giant block of time to see.
Yeah, I will say you're better off watching the director. Having not seen the director's cut, I think you're better off watching the director's cut.
Oh, shit.
Why? Did you already start watching the theatrical cut?
No. It's just like it's even more time.
I think it's one of those movies that it benefits from having a little bit more breathing room. So I would just go with the director's cut. Yeah. All right. Speaking of other movies that are based off of books, should we talk about The Midnight Sky?
I guess.
All right. What did you think of the movie?
I didn't like it. It's like a low, it's fine, bordering on mediocre. It's so boring. I was checking my phone constantly. I was so bored. Like, nothing happens. There's no momentum. It's just so dramatically inert. And it's like, why? Why was this movie made? There's nothing happens in the whole fucking movie. Except the part where that one person dies. And that's like, I mean, that scene was actually pretty good. But the rest of the movie is just like, they're just standing around being like, the Earth is bad. We're in space. Got to do the dishes.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite on the level of like mediocre, but I think it's fine. I think that's the problem with it, is that it doesn't build to anything, because I actually like all of the sort of boring, like, let's look at George Clooney eat cereal for 3 minutes. Let's look at him stumble around an abandoned warehouse or an abandoned station for like 5 minutes. Let's look at these people on the space station do their space, or in the spacecraft, do their spacecrafty things. Like, I actually like a lot of those moments, but then it just feels like the movie is like cut together with like, okay, we watched them do this, now we watch them do that, now we watch them do that, and the plot never really like kicks in.
There is no plot.
Yeah, well, I mean, when the major plot is just like, this this radio tower doesn't work. We need to go to another radio tower and see if that radio tower works.
Okay, so here's a summary of the movie. Okay, George Clooney is a scientist who lives in an Arctic survey station, and all of humanity has been evacuated from the Earth to a place that is unknown. They don't really say where they've gone. Maybe underground.
They said that, yeah, they went to temporary underground shelters.
Yeah, so the rest of the world is covered in radiation that just kills everything. And there's a bunch of vessels in outer space exploring possible second homes. And one of them is still around, and they're coming back from a moon near Jupiter that George Clooney's character discovered. And he has to get to another survey station so that he can tell them not to come back to Earth while they're trying to make it back to Earth. And that's the movie.
Pretty much. Yep. And it's 2 hours long.
Yeah, it's basically like
oh, and there's a lot of vomiting in it.
A lot, yeah. I mean, basically, the whole movie is basically like, oh no, my cell phone broke. I have to go get a new phone so I can call my wife and tell her not to come home because the house is on fire. And then she comes home and sees that the house is on fire, and then I call her at that very moment, and I'm like, yeah, babe, house is on fire. We got to find a new house. The end.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And it's 2 hours. Like,
yeah, it's 2 hours.
I think I'm pissed because you made me watch this, and I never wanted to see this movie. And I feel like how Austin probably felt when we made him watch The Lobster. Like, he was so angry after we made him watch The Lobster, and I'm so angry after you're like, I want to watch The Midnight Sky. I'm like, fine. And, like, this is so much worse than I ever thought it would be, and I'm pissed because I'm doing this for the stupid fucking podcast.
To be fair, I offered 3 potentially all mediocre suggestions to watch.
At least you had my recommendation that Pieces of a Woman is good.
I know, but you had already written the review, and I was like, I don't want you to just be like, yeah, Pieces of a Woman was good, Matt. You could read my review for it. Now you talk about it and be like, I like Vanessa Kirby in Mission Impossible Fallout. I know she can act because I saw her in The Crown. Shia LaBeouf is a dick. Ellen Burstyn is still alive somehow. There's my review for
after Billy Friedkin tried to kill her.
After Billy Friedkin tried to kill her, and then she got like super high during oh my god, Darren Aronofsky's many movies that she makes cameo appearances in.
Oh, you're thinking of the drug one.
Yeah,
Fuck,
I am.
What's it called?
Requiem for a Dream. One of us would get it eventually. I don't know. I didn't know anything about it. I just started playing it. And, like, the thing about, not Requiem for a Dream, but The Midnight Sky is, like, there are things about George Clooney's movies that I like, because I generally like him as an actor. I don't know. Were you a fan of The American?
Yes, I am. I really like George Clooney as an actor. He's the last old school movie star where he's always like this handsome, well-dressed, charming guy who only plays one character his entire career. I mean, he is. He only plays one character in every movie, and it's great. He's really good at it.
Yeah.
But that's how old school movie stars were. They're charming, they look good, and they play the same thing. They just do it very well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. I was going to say I take some issue with that because his character in Syriana is different than his traditional character, and then...
Okay, what do you think is the traditional George Clooney character?
Danny Ocean.
Yeah, but like what's the archetype?
Charming, suave, use it like he says more with his face than he does with his words.
So I would disagree with that.
I was going to say, because I'm thinking of both Michael Clayton and Up in the Air, and in both of those, he's just like, he seems like he has everything going for him, but he's actually just like a complete mess.
Yeah.
And I guess that's probably closer to who he is he's just like, he seems like a person who should be in a good spot, but in actuality is just a complete mess.
So the George Clooney's type that he always plays is he's the boss. He's the man in charge. Okay. He's the guy, he's the guy who knows what to do and then does it. And he can play that many different ways. He can play, he's Danny Ocean, who is the boss. He could play, a guy like in Hail Caesar where he thinks he's the boss, but he's not. Or he can play... He could be like Michael Clayton, where he's the boss. He knows what's up. He's the man in charge. He's the man of action. But he's got a lot of problems in his life. He can also play the boss who's like incompetent. Mm-hmm. But in every movie, every role I've ever seen him in, George Clooney is the boss.
There's a Tony Danza reference there. Okay, so George Clooney is the boss. Yeah, and that would apply here too. Or he's either the boss or the expert, I think, because in Syriana he's the expert. In this, he's the expert. So I think the boss or the expert. Yeah, that's true. So he would be playing two type in this movie as well.
Yeah, I would say so. So in terms of movies he's directed, I mean, how many of them have you seen? Because I think this is the first George Clooney directed movie I've seen at least the whole way through.
Okay, so I have seen Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, half of Good Night and Good Luck, Leatherheads, The Ides of March, Suburbicon, and this. So the only one I haven't seen is The Monuments Men, which just did not seem like a movie that's interesting. And I would venture to say, I'd venture to say that a lot of the movies that I watch of his, like in the moment, there's a lot of things that I may enjoy to varying degrees, because Suburbicon is just all kinds of awful. So there's certain things to varying degrees that I enjoy. Like in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, the movie overall is really good. Sam Rockwell is really great in the movie. They do a lot of interesting things. But they're all relatively forgettable unless they're awful to me. Because I remember Suburbicon really well. Leatherheads was fun but dumb. And like I said, I struggled to get through Good Night and Good Luck. So, Oh, and all of his movies move really slowly and kind of don't have much of a plot going.
Interesting. So yeah, that's what I wanted to ask is, like, does he have a style as far as you can tell? Like, what are the elements of it?
Good casting, because like Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, great cast. Good Night and Good Luck, great older cast. Leatherheads, relatively great cast. Ides of March, really great casting. The Monuments Men, probably good casting, because, I mean, Matt Damon led it. Suburbicon, it has a lot of good people in it. And The Midnight Sky, to me, has a lot of good people who are doing their best with some of the stuff that they have, but the movie just doesn't really gel.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, George Clooney, moment to moment, doing a good job. Felicity, I'm going to pass over Felicity Jones. David Oyelowo, doing a good job. Kyle Chandler, to me, doing a good job. Damian Bashir does really good with nothing. He brings a lot of character to someone who is just completely underwritten.
Yep.
So I think he's got a lot of actors who are doing a really good job, and it makes sense because he is an actor. So he's able to kind of help tap into them. And like the girl who played as Iris, that's, helping George Clooney helping George Clooney be Sam Porter Bridges. She's really good, even though all she does is just like stare. Like, I'm like, oh, she's adorable, and all she does is stare, and she doesn't really have any other expression. But through film language, they're able to do this. Yeah,
this whole movie, I was thinking, like, man, this would be really. I really wish this was just a Death Stranding movie instead.
I know. I was like, this is, to me, it was like, this is George Clooney played like 5 minutes of Death Stranding, and he's like, I want to make that as a movie. By God, he tried. By God, he tried. But that's the thing, is like the plot, if you're going into it for like, oh, this is a really compelling plot, I'm like, Like, I like hard sci-fi, and if this actually had some sort of groundbreaking moment that ties everything cleanly and makes it all worth it, then the movie would be a lot better. But as it is, it's just a series of events that are just like tangentially connected to each other.
Well, I just wish there was anything compelling, whether it's plot-wise, character-wise, set-piece-wise, visually. It's just like, there's no plot, so you can cross that off the list.
Yeah.
The character stuff is all very muted.
Yeah.
And then, like, the most character work that happens is with George Clooney, which even then is muted. And, like, the twist, you can see coming a mile away. Like, I didn't even think it was a twist, but they try to sell it as a twist.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so it's, like, even that's, like, not that compelling. There's no, like, big set-piece moments, really. I mean, the spacewalk is, like,
it's kind of cool.
It's okay,
Kinda.
you know, but it's like the single best image in the entire movie is when that one girl's been wounded and there's like little orbs of blood coming up into her helmet.
Yeah.
And then they take the helmet off and blood just explodes out of it. And you're like, holy
that was
shit.
So fucking awesome.
Like, that was the only moment in the entire movie that grabbed my attention. And the rest of it, I was just like scrolling through memes because the memes were better than the movie.
That moment was awesome. I liked it when they were doing the fly through of the spaceship and they kind of like, again, I like all of the stuff in the beginning, but yeah, I stopped the movie a couple of times because I was like, all right, I need a snack here, or I need to pee here, or I've got a call coming in, and like, oh, better take this call. So yeah, I totally get it. Like I said, it's hard for me because like the individual elements of the movie I like a lot. Like I like all of the cinematography. I thought the movie looked good, and I also liked how much time it spent establishing the space. But not you know what I mean? Establishing the area, not like spaces in the Final Frontier. But I like that they took the time to like show like, oh, this is what the landscape looks like. It's both, you know, hazardous and horrible and beautiful. Or like they do that really bad green screen shot at the end where what's her name, Felicity Jones is standing on the moon and like the camera's circling around her and you see Jupiter and stuff, and I'm like, okay, that looks really cool. It's really pretty. The production design for the most part, I liked it a lot, but like it just doesn't gel properly. Like it's not enough that the visuals keep you engaged. It's like it's all stuff that we've kind of seen before and not done interestingly, except for like when the wind is passing over the snow. I was like, okay, that looks pretty cool. But again, they don't do anything with it like that. And that's how I feel about the whole movie. Like I love the music in the movie. I thought the music was fantastic. But you know, it's like very, like it's very clearly inspired by all of the sci-fi movies that have come before it, you know, like the 2001s and Interstellar and all like that. So like all of these individual components of the movie I really like, but they just don't, it's like putting together like Roblox when you think they're Legos. It's not working. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's get into spoilers because who the fuck cares?
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah, please do.
So George Clooney has, you know, he's got the young girl following him around who doesn't speak. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty obvious that she's not real. And then like I assumed from the beginning that Felicity Jones was his daughter. And like halfway through the movie, I'm like, oh, maybe the little girl that he's hallucinating is a young Felicity Jones. And then at the end of the movie, they're like, oh, the girl was a hallucination the whole time. It was really, you know, Felicity Jones who's his daughter. He feels guilty because he abandoned her. And now she's in space and he's trying to help her as his like last act before he dies. Isn't that tragic? And it's like, you know, the last scene is good, but I already knew all of this. So it's not like a revelation or anything. Yeah, and then it just kind of left me thinking like, Why? What was the point? What was this movie trying to say? What was the point of having me sit through 2 hours of George Clooney doing blood transfusions and talking
and
to
vomiting.
a silent child and like weirdly forced small talk between people on a spaceship?
So the big twist that I thought was going to happen was like I thought there was going to be time travel involved. I was like, oh, we're going to find out that the whole time this
there would
ship
be some
is the
time
cause.
travel.
But you know, when the ending comes and it's like, my name is Iris too, and I was like, oh, so the girl was it was all in his head the whole time. Like, okay, why did he spend so much time getting her out of the thing? Like, why did we waste so much time with this and that? And yeah, I think like the main purpose of this movie is that George Clooney has proven that he can be like Leo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt and put himself through hell in order to make a movie that he wants to make. Because I think they shot a lot of this in really cold climate, and like the snowstorm scene was like shot in a snowstorm, and I was like, wow, why would you do that? So I think
For
he's just
this
trying
movie.
to like, well, when you're shooting the movie, you think you're gonna have a more groundbreaking moment than you actually have.
I guess.
I think the other thing we take away from this movie is that George Clooney probably shouldn't direct another movie anytime soon. But I could have told you that after Suburbicon, so...
He may need to take some time off from directing.
Yeah, it's sad because this is the first movie he's been in since that like Money Monster movie in like 2016. So like he's an older guy, so he's clearly like slowing down, and he only needs to do things that he's interested in doing. I think there is something interesting in doing science fiction because this is very clearly inspired sort of science fiction, and you know, sci-fi is fun to dabble in and it makes you seem intellectual, and I also think this was supposed to be like his Oscar bait movie, just by like the slow pace of the movie, the really overpowering music that drives the scenes forward and is used in ways that like contrast with what's going on in the scene, and like, you know, nothing says Academy Award winning like an actor isolated from everything else and not knowing what to do with themselves. Yeah, but unfortunately, it's like the worst type of Oscar bait where it's just like, we're making an Academy Award winning movie because we can make an Academy Award winning movie, and there's just nothing else to it. Like, they try to resolve things I feel like they had that action scene outside in the spacewalk just to have an action scene to wake people up, or the scene where the trailer they're in starts flooding when she's like, my name's blah blah blah, and it hard cuts to a loud noise and George Clooney drowning. I was like, oh, that woke me up. I was starting to like fall asleep and lose interest in the movie. So like it feels like they had action scenes just to have action scenes, which is not a good sign that things are going well.
Well, and like, I mean, those hard cuts also help sell you on the fact that he's not of sound mind. He's hallucinating all this.
Well, that's what they're supposed to do.
I mean, that's what they did for me. That's why the twist wasn't a twist. It's because they showed their hand too early.
It would have been more interesting if it was just like the perfect ending to this movie is like the little girl like throws George Clooney's dead carcass into like the incinerator, and then it cuts 20 years and it's like the girl all grown up just like mopping the floor and like sitting around like the season 2 premiere of Lost. And yeah, that's another thing that it just seemed like in the end it was all a dream. It's like, ugh, God.
I also like how he leaves the phone call in the middle of talking to his daughter and just dies. He just walks outside and dies.
Yeah. I will say another thing that drove me nuts in this movie is like at the end when Kyle Chandler's like, I'm going down to see my family. I'm going to go down and be with them. And then like the other guy's like, well, I don't want to be the third wheel here. So yeah, I'll go down with you and I'll bring the body. Like the way that whole scene was shot it seemed like that Damien Bashir was like purposefully sabotaging the mission, because like Kyle Chandler has this look of like, all right, I'm kind of concerned about you, and it's like panning around in like that circle cam that everyone hates as Damien Bashir's trying to get like a better vantage point, and he's like,
and he circles behind like a bookcase.
Yeah, and like you're seeing like partially obscured characters, and it's like this feels more sinister than it does like super sentimental. Sinister. I was like, is he gonna kill Kyle Chandler right now and like wear his corpse as like a costume or something? So I was like, that seems weird, but also just like their motivation is understandable, but it also is like I guess they have like a passing comment that there's already a colony set up on the planet. So, you know, when Felicity Jones and Adewale, played by David Oyelowo, go back to Oyelowo, and David go back to the planet, there are people there who are like, you know, starting the human race. They're not going to have to like Adam and Eve it with like weird incest babies or anything like that. But it does seem weird that so many people are like, oh, I want to go and die on planet Earth in like the worst and most painful way possible through like
being incinerated by ionizing radiation.
So,
yeah. Also,
that struck
the
me
last
as weird.
shot of the movie was really weird, where like George Clooney is having a radio conversation with Felicity Jones and David Oyelowo, and Felicity Jones is talking about this moon of Jupiter that Clooney discovered when he was a younger man, and he's like touched that it's all come full circle, and his daughter is now going to start this colony on a planet that he discovered. So he just leaves while they're talking, wanders out into the wilderness, and dies. And then they're like, it's like, are you still there? And then there's just this weirdly awkward, like, two-shot of Felicity Jones and David Oyelowo that almost looks like a comedy two-shot, because they're both facing the camera, like, forward. And they just sit there. And, like, you can feel someone behind the camera wave, and then they just start like mechanically pushing buttons, and the credits roll. It's like this is so weird, because the camera holds on them doing nothing for a uncomfortably long time, and then they just start like beep boop bop boop pushing buttons. Credits start flashing on the screen. It's like, is it gonna still hold on them while they pretend to press buttons? And it does. It just keeps holding on them while they fake press buttons. I'm just like, this is a weird choice.
Yeah, it's like I've seen The Graduate, and I remember when Dustin Hoffman and the other person, Elaine, were staring at the screen, and they both looked like deer in the headlights, and Mike Nichols thought that was a good idea. But like that's like doing that, but not understanding why it was so effective in The Graduate. With that said, I think there was a subtext in the movie that Felicity Jones's character and Maya, the girl who ends up dying, like wanted each other.
What?
And yeah, I felt like there was like a weird subtext of that.
I didn't
like
get
the
that
scene,
at all.
Okay, the scene where it's like she's like, oh, don't you want to hear the baby's heartbeat? And like Felicity Jones and Maya have like these like this, they're looking at each other, and they're kind of looking longingly at each other, and then like they reach out and grab each other. I know at one point they reached out and like held each other's hands. So I thought there was like a weird subtext where like even though Felicity Jones was having David O's baby, they actually didn't like really love each other, and in fact she was more in love with the black girl. That's what I thought was happening, and so that's why in the ending when they're just like, all right, we're here, and they kind of like stare off into space, and it's just like the ending is actually really depressing and not like uplifting, like, yeah, they're gonna go and continue the human race. It's like, oh, we don't love each other, and you're having my baby, and we're going back to a planet that like thousands of people, like there can only be like a couple thousand people at most there, and we're all gonna be like fucked because the human race is fucked. That's the alternate way of looking at this.
I mean, the ending is pretty
movie.
Bleak and depressing. I mean, there is like a hopeful slant to it, but overall the movie is pretty bleak.
Yeah, and that's why I wonder, like, in a couple of years, are we going to look back on, or say in like 10 years, we'll look back on this and be like, oh, actually, this movie was like the whole ending where it's like, oh, you're my daughter. Oh, this is supposed to be uplifting, is like, it's just kind of like a false positive. Whereas like the movie is going to be seen as this like, you know, really slow moving comment on, you know, the idea of like human perseverance and how ultimately futile it is.
I don't know.
So I don't know. It may be appraised in the future. The one person who liked this movie is gonna write, George Clooney is actually a genius. Here are 10 reasons why, and 5 reasons why not.
I always hate that. Like, here's 8 reasons why French fries are tasty, and 3 reasons why they're not. It's like
3 reasons why they're gonna
what?
kill you. Like, oh, it's a very 2020s movie.
What does that mean?
That it was like, for me, it was fine. It wasn't particularly amazing. It's probably going to be kind of forgettable, and it dealt with isolation and staying in your social bubble. I feel bad because I like Kyle Chandler as an actor, but I feel like he's always good in most of the movies he's in, but he's not always in good movies. Like, I feel like he's wasted in most movies. Like in this, at least he had a lot of screen time. He didn't do much. You know, it's probably good for him because he just cashes easy paycheck and gets to work with good people, but still. Well, do you have anything else to say about Midnight Sky? The Midnight Sky?
It's hard to come up with things to say about it because it's so boring.
Yeah.
Also, like, what was up with the like spider web plastic everywhere?
Yeah, I don't know. That's another thing, is like, you would think that by the year movies that take place in 2049 are just not your thing. I think that should have been the sign. That should have been the sign that you're like, oh, fuck this movie. Get this shit as far away from me as possible. Matt, we're doing something else. Like, okay.
I know it takes place in the cursed year of 2049.
Explain, like, there's the nuclear winter in Blade. It's actually like a loosely connected to Blade Runner 2049. Like, minutes after Harrison Ford touches the glass with his daughter, all of a sudden, like, the radiation just spikes out of control at LA and blows it up. And cut to George Clooney in the start of this movie. It's like, but if that happened, they would just relocate everyone to Mars because Mars is already colonized. Midnight Sky, you didn't think about your premise closely enough. Everything on the spaceship looked like it was made of, like, and I actually liked a lot of the visual effects they did for the spaceship. My issue is with the materials that they use. Like, why are you still using like single pane glass on your little like rotating glass thing? Like, shit broke like nothing else. Or why don't you use better connectors for the radiation, the radio tower that you have, the radio transceiver that you have? Like, don't you think that would be important to keep communication active? Like, you should put all the protection in there. Yeah, I don't know why. Lots of strange choices.
I just thought it was weird that his gun was made of that weird spiderweb plastic.
George,
like,
Clooney,
everything
futurist.
has that spiderweb plastic design on it. And it's like, why does his rifle have that? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
So this movie cost $100 million, and I guess what they were doing is like, here's a rifle, but we need this rifle to look more sci-fi-y. We can't make it a laser gun because that would be too cool. So let's just put plastic spider webs on it.
$100 million.
Yeah, a good amount of that went to the special effects, I'm sure.
It's all that Casamigos tequila money.
A lot of it went to like really, really, really warm baths in the Sahara, in Iceland or wherever, so that George Clooney could like de-thaw his feet and his beard.
I know.
Like $50 million went to beard quaffing money. Make sure it's perfect every time. Hey man, making a spaceship is expensive, and then making those digital space suits like in Gravity is really expensive.
Yep.
So
it was interesting seeing everyone's like CGI head inside of a digital spacesuit.
Dude, the other thing is like the scene where that blood just explodes out of Maya, and like it was an awesome scene, and it was just like it was like the simple. It seems like it would have been the simplest like liquid simulation ever. It's like, okay, let's do a liquid simulation in 0G. Like, the pieces looked okay, but it just reminded me of like a liquid simulation in in like 3ds Max, or like even in a video game. Like, this is how liquid expands out in this environment area. And I was like, it's a cool effect, but it feels like it's a really simple effect.
Yeah.
Which, again, sometimes those are the best. And it was effective, because I was like, oh God, I feel bad for the people who don't have helmets, because like that blood will just get sucked right into their nose. So. Again, all of these pieces in the movie that like, it's like George Clooney was like, oh, I want to do this in my movie. I want to do this in my movie. I want to do this in my movie. And like, the screenwriter, Mark L. Smith, is like, okay, I guess I can put that in. I don't think it's progressing the story. And George Clooney's just like, what story? Oh, fuck.
Seriously. Did you also think that the flashbacks were the worst part of the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were dumb.
They were really bad. And they're really, like, ham-fisted. And they have that, like, bad dialogue of, like, a side character explains everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Like the young George Clooney guy, I don't know who he is, but he has a really good George Clooney impression.
Yeah. He does. Yeah, he does.
He really does. He's very good at it. He's just sitting there typing while his like girlfriend or whatever is explaining the plot in the background of the scene, and it's so weird. It's like, it's a weird visual. It's bad writing. Because, you know, the girlfriend is just like, let me explain the plot and your motivations to you. You're so obsessed with your work, and your personal life is going to shit. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, fuck, shut up. Like,
it has been 5 years since we last met, and your daughter, who is in the car, who is your daughter, but you don't know it because you never come here.
I can tell that you're sick because you have a runny nose and there's tissues in your pocket. Like, it's like that. It's like that kind of writing. That's always going to be my example of, like, shitty dialogue from now on. Shitty exposition where they explain the scene to you. It's always going to be, I can tell that you're sick because you have a runny nose and there's tissues in your pocket. Like, it's for a movie where no one talks or explains anything for the most part. They just dump all this shit on you in those flashbacks.
Yeah, okay, thanks for reminding me. I actually like that they don't explain everything except, you know, in those flashbacks in the last 5 minutes of the movie. I like that everything is kind of like inferred, but you know that about me. I like that kind of stuff. Maybe it's too inferred in this movie and a little bit too like obscure. But that scene in particular is kind of like an example of the rest of the movie in that, like, I actually like the fact that in that shot, you can see that he's growing a larger beard because he doesn't take care of himself. Like, so character-wise, okay, that's interesting. The fact that she's out of focus the entire time that he's still working and she's just talking at him. Okay, visually, we can tell that he just doesn't, there's only one thing he cares about. So visually, that I'm like, okay, that's really clever. But then she's like going on and on and on. And then it cuts to a scene of her in focus as she's talking, and then cuts back to her out of focus. And then he looks back at her and she gets in focus for a split second, goes back to what he's doing. And it's like, okay, I understand what's going on and who he is mentally. I just don't care. I don't care about these flashbacks. I don't care about what happened in the past. I don't care about their really like awkward first time flirting. I don't care about any of that. You could have probably just dropped all of that or truncated it into like a music video style flashback and spared a good 10 minutes of screen time. And then we're only watching, 150 minutes instead of 2 hours. So yes, yeah, it's like when they had a chance to further explain the plot, it just is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that kind of explains why the ending lands so blandly and so boringly. So yeah. And it's tough because like I can't really blame the screenplay because like, there's probably a draft out there where all of this hit on a much better emotional core, but then like there's a ton. Well, that's also, I mean, I have a feeling like you can read that first draft of the script and be like, oh wow, this is really interesting. now let me put in things that I want. And then like if they're shooting in like Iceland where there's like huge blizzards and they're building sets there and like nothing is warm and everyone's miserable, it's going to be hard to get the footage you need, especially if George Clooney is like, it cares about his crew. It's going to be difficult to get all of the little pieces you need. It's going to be difficult to do the things you need to do when you're trying to memorize lines, not die, but also fake like a really rough cough and do all of these things. Like, it must have been a production nightmare.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, I think the script has to have some blame in this.
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
It's like,
definitely.
Like the movie, like I said, the biggest problem with the movie is that there's no momentum. It's just this giant inert mass of nothing. And, if you're going to put, like, if the script has no momentum, the movie definitely won't,
No, yeah, you're right. And I mean, it has to have more momentum than just, we need to get to a bigger communications tower. It's like, okay, well, that leads you forward, but then we need every scene to build off of itself and tell us something new. Like, we can't spend an hour of time on that spaceship for them to just be like, oh, we're going towards Earth. Like the big conflict, we're a little off center from going to Earth. And again, I like all of that stuff where they're like, we have to recalculate everything. We got to do math. We have to figure out where we're going. And then they get into like the Force Awakens style 3D holograms where like they're walking around and like moving graphic pieces around and like, we should be fine if we go here. It's like, but it's just like their main, like the way that they stack objects in front of the space crew to getting back to Earth, it feels like they're just spinning in a circle. There's nothing to it. There's no development of like, well, what do we need to do to change it to create some sort of like dynamic twist to the plot to keep us engaged. It's just, do we care about these people? Well, the movie tells me I have to care about them, so I guess I should. Let's keep watching. Or in your case, the movie tells me I need to be invested in them, but I don't care about them. So I'm just going to keep it running so that I can say that by the end of the movie I had watched it, but it's just running. So,
yep.
Yeah. So in the end, if you have to watch a Netflix movie, watch Pieces of a Woman instead.
Yes. Skip Midnight Sky.
I think if you're really into science fiction and you're like really craving that need, get HBO Max and watch Ad Astra instead.
Yeah.
I actually didn't hate this movie, but it is kind of just like, it's all really cool production stuff that doesn't add up to anything spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than like the old guard. I'm pissed because this wasn't my choice.
I also feel bad because I would expect more. Like I'm hoping for more. Like, God, and this part was horrible, and this part was horrible. But when a movie is just kind of like mediocre, disappointing, it's just like I don't want to talk about it at all. I just want to move on to something else, which is what I'm kind of getting from you. Is like I'm trying to find things to comment on.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like digging for things to either praise or be mad about, but it's just like the whole movie's just one big
It's beige wallpaper.
Oh God, is it ever?
Oh man, yeah. It's funny. I was actually, when you were talking about how Robert Rodriguez was a horrible director, I was going to be like, and speaking of people in Spy Kids 2, let's talk about in Spy Kids, let's talk about George Clooney's new movie, The Midnight Sky. But yeah, that ended up falling flat. So, what else do you want to talk about today?
I don't know. Wait, we should probably rate the movie.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I know what your rating is, though.
It's a low fine.
Yeah. Mine's like a solid fine. I'm just staring at the poster of it with like George Clooney, and he's all colored blue with that giant beard, and he's just staring into the sky with the title over him, and it's just like, that's the best they could do. I mean, this was supposed to be released in theaters, and like, Like, you can tell that all of the budget went to making sure that those IMAX shots looked really good. And there's just like it's not going to be an IMAX. No one's ever going to see this big majestic space scene in theaters. So here's a question for you. Like, vastness of space and everything like that. One of the big draws for IMAX originally was that you would see these space documentaries that took full advantage of IMAX cameras and like showed the vastness of space. Do you think that's the reason why every single space movie or science fiction movie taking place in the greater galaxy and things like that are all shot on IMAX with these like really big sweeping shots of the spaceships and everything? Is it because like in our minds now we just tie IMAX photography and space together?
Yeah, that is probably it. I mean, I think it's become like a shorthand almost, where the two just go together at this point. So for someone to not do that would seem weird.
Yeah. Was Ad Astra, was that released in IMAX?
I don't know.
Because like it's almost a cliche at this point.
Well, it's like indie dramas being shot handheld is a cliche at this point. Space movies shot on IMAX is a cliche at this point.
Really intense scenes are handheld cameras with like super shaky camera.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that it was. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's cool, I guess. But how many movies do we have to see? Like, how many space movies do we have to see in IMAX before we're like, all right, we've been there, done that. We've seen this before. We know what we're getting into.
It's time to shoot space scenes on 8mm.
See that grainy thing? That's a nebula. What grainy thing? What's a nebula? I don't know. I just like you said, like there's so much money that goes into shooting things for like an IMAX digital shot or creating it in your computer. It's like, oh, we're gonna have to spend like $2 million for this one shot to show it in like an IMAX theater. But then it's like something like The Midnight Sky. No one's gonna go and pay IMAX to see that, even if it was released in theaters. I don't think anyone would be that interested in seeing it in theaters. Although all of those shots in isolation would be really cool to watch in IMAX. Like, you just feel like you're wasting your time and you've wasted like $40 to go see it in IMAX. So it's just like, why?
Yeah.
Show me a nature documentary where like I can see every single piece of fur on a gorilla or something as it mauls that kid who fell into the zoo pen.
Just upconvert the Raid 2 to IMAX.
Oh my god. Dude, that would be amazing.
Dude,
would have
watching
to go
the Raid
in
2 in IMAX would be mind-boggling.
It would. Something like the first Raid, I don't think you could do because they have that one scene where Rama is like tearing at the ground with an axe and the camera's like going up and down with him. I was watching it with a buddy one time and he's like, "Oh, dude, I'm glad they cut away from that because I was starting to feel queasy." And I was like, "Oh, I guess this
the first Raid is also just really claustrophobic."
It is, yeah. And plus, if you watch it now, the camera that they shot it in is just so bad. Like, the movie just looks so... It looks like a bad YouTube video and not like grungy like an 8mm movie does.
Yeah.
But the Raid 2, yeah, they probably could do that. Like, they'd have to crop it a little bit because the aspect ratio isn't quite right. But it was shot in 4K, I think. Okay. For the most part. And so if it's shot in 4K, you can up-res it because most movies are still showing shit in 1080. Like, they'll show it on a 4K projector, but they'll put it in 1080 because they're more comfortable with that. So it's only like Netflix and things like that.
Man, the Raid 2 is such a masterpiece.
I know.
Why couldn't we have watched the Raid 2 instead of The Midnight Sky?
I don't know. Do you want to do that for our next? Should we do like a spotlight episode on the Raid 2 for the next episode?
Maybe. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I think whatever we do, it should be a spotlight because unless there's a movie that you watch and you're like, Matt, I want to talk to you about this, like, because what are our other options? What options did I give you for this week? The new Soderbergh movie came out.
Yeah, there's a new Soderbergh movie. There's a couple more awards baity movies that I think are coming out soon. like Nomadland, and some Korean American movie that's getting a lot of good reviews that'll probably be up for a bunch of Oscars and crap. I don't know if like prestige dramas are our core competency.
The podcast Under the Wheels, talking about The English Patient in great detail. It's like, what's the great detail about The English Patient? It sucks. Wait, have you seen The English Patient?
I've seen enough of The English Patient to know that I wouldn't enjoy it if I watched the whole thing.
Do you know what the big twist is?
That at the end of the movie you wasted all your time?
Yep. Yeah. That was the movie, speaking of Oscar baity movies, and me trying to artificially extend this episode as long as I can. That was the first huge movie that Weinstein won by pushing the For Your Consideration campaign. And the movie is just so whatever. Like, I still don't know what it's about. Which is funny because, you know, Anthony Minghella made The Talented Mr. Ripley, which, like, I think a lot of people like a lot more. But at the time, it was just seen as really strange and weird. Whereas The English Patient, like, you look back on it and it's like looking at Crash winning the Academy Award. It was just such a weird win because, like, it just kind of is, like, about a guy who, like, has an affair with a woman in World War I time, and then, like, his plane goes down and his face lights on fire, and there's, like, a parallel storyline, and it's just like, why am I watching this? What's the greater point? Is like they have like a twist at the end of the movie that's supposed to be groundbreaking, and instead it's just like, did this get an Academy Award because Kristen Scott Thomas showed her boobs or something? Like, what are we even doing here, guys?
Well, I know, like Anthony Minghella, I think, is been forgot. Well, he's dead, but he's been forgotten by, like, history, I think, as a backlash to The English Patient. But I think it's unfair to him because he actually did make good movies, and, like, The Talented Mr. Ripley is a great movie. So it just kind of sucks that all he's known for is like, oh, The English Patient, English Patient bad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, to me, it just, there wasn't a lot of stuff that I found super interesting about his movies. Like, he did the only one, like, he did Play, which is okay, that's a short movie, but the only other one that I'm really aware of that he did was Cold Mountain, and after that he just became a producer for the most, from what I can tell, for the most part. And, like, he started off as a writer, I think, and, like, out of the movies that I know about him, it's like Talented Mr. Ripley, you know, kind of ahead of its time, but I've never heard anyone say anything really good about Cold Mountain. And he also is just kind of like, he seems like the mold that Tom Hooper was cast in. They were like, oh, you're English, you can be our next Anthony Minghella. Like, you know, a lesser version, but one who has all of his because, like, Anthony Minghella was also one of the producers of The Reader, and The Reader is like, it's like The English Patient Part 2. I didn't find anything interesting about it.
It's The English Patient, but about the Holocaust, so it's even more English patient-y.
Well, yeah, it's like, oh, it's sexy Nazi played by Kate Winslet who's getting it on the whole movie. I was like, I was desensitized by the end. I was just like, why? What's the point of this movie? And Ralph Fiennes is in it. It's like, no, just stop casting him in your Oscar bait. It's bad. Except for Schindler's List, it's bad. God, why did I start talking about The English Patient?
Because you're trying to drag out this podcast beyond its natural lifespan.
Yeah, that's right. Because we were talking about Oscar bait and how we're an Oscar baity podcast because we hate The English Patient and Crash, and think that Mad Max Fury Road got well, it did get robbed.
It totally got robbed. Absolutely, 100% was robbed.
What won that year?
Spotlight.
Oh, that was the year with the
Spotlight.
Revenant,
I'm never gonna
right?
watch Spotlight just because I hate it for taking Best Picture.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's another one. It's like The English Patient all over again.
I know. Well, it's like it was just insane. Like Spotlight, hardly won anything, and then it just wins Best Picture. Meanwhile, Mad Max is like sweeping every category pretty much. And then Inarritu won for Best Director for some bizarre reason.
I took my actors out to the harshest climate I could find, but the ice was melting, so I had to take them even farther. And I just kept the camera on Leonardo DiCaprio's face as he just got more and more pissed off at me, and Academy Award-winning gold. And like George Miller's sitting over there, and he's like, "Yeah, I did that, but I did it for significantly more months, and I had a much tighter movie come out of it. So why are you giving it to Inarritu? Oh, the weather you did it in, George Miller. It was too nice. It was too nice of a climate. It wasn't harsh enough. You mean the desert in the middle of summer with no water wasn't harsh enough?"
What a farce.
God. Speaking of Mad Max, viewers who have not seen all of the Mad Max movies, if you have HBO Max, they're all available right now.
In fact, the reason why it's called HBO Max is because
of This is why HBO Max, Warner Brothers, you should be a sponsor for us, because our podcast title, Under the Wheels, came from Mad Max Fury Road, which so did the second half of your name, HBO Max. Mad Max Fury Road, HBO Mad Max Fury Road Under the Wheels podcast tie-in. You know you want to, HBO. You know you want to. Just get in contact with us. We're semi-big fans of Warner Brothers, kind of. And we're also... Oh, wait, no, never mind. It wasn't produced by WB. I was going to say Ad Astra was produced by Warner Brothers, but it wasn't. It was produced by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures and 20th Century Studios.
Well, it was 20th Century Fox at the time.
It was. Well, anything else to talk about today?
Not really.
No.
Yeah, nah. Warner Brothers is the least offensive studio for sure.
I think so. Yeah, I agree with you.
Because, like, I don't know. You got Sony. I don't know what they're doing. They're struggling right now.
Are they?
Universal is struggling.
Yeah.
Disney sucks. They're just the worst. I hate them.
Disney has a studio. It's coarse and it gets everywhere. They really
Disney.
do. They're everywhere. They're fuck.
They're
everywhere.
It's coarse. Gets everywhere.
It's like Sand 2. It's bland movie making.
Not just Disney, but Marvel and Pixar too. I hate them.
Now they've got Lucasfilms.
Yeah.
In 20th century, they're gone.
They're gone. Paramount is like hanging on by the skin of their teeth, and by the skin of their teeth, I mean Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tom Cruise in general, because if theaters ever reopen, they're just gonna be like, they're gonna space out 6 months apart. Top Gun Maverick, make a ton of money. Mission Impossible 6, make a ton of money. Done. They'll be like, okay, cool. We're financially good.
Not only does Top Gun Maverick look terrible, but I still can't figure out what the hell it's supposed to be about.
I mean, I think the important thing is that they got rid of Kelly McGillis and replaced her with Jennifer Connelly. But other than that, I heard that the premise of it was not important because Tom Cruise flies jets.
There probably is no premise. It's just Tom Cruise is like, "Hi, I'm a midget with a high-pitched voice," and then, like,
I am going to fly
those Jerry Bruckheimer shots of planes flying by with like that harsh glare of the setting sun,
and like a blue filter over, or like a rainbow colored filter over everything.
Oh, so here's something interesting.
Yes.
Actually interesting. So the other day, I was hanging out with my girlfriend, and her grandma was watching Turkish television.
As one is to do, yeah.
As one does.
As one does.
Well, because, like, she likes to watch Turkish television because she speaks Turkish, for one thing, but also because, like, Turkey is a lot more liberal than Iran, so there's usually better content.
Okay.
Whereas, like, Iranian television, it's all propaganda and, like, really low-quality soap operas, whereas, like, the Turkish TV has, like, higher-quality soap operas.
Okay.
So, my girlfriend changed it to... She wanted to show me Azerbaijani TV, just so I could get a taste for what it's like. And I made some wisecrack. It's like, oh, what is it? Just, like, shows about cows and farms? And she switches it, and the thing that comes on, it's like this weird propaganda song, and it's all just dudes singing in the mountains about how, like, Artsakh is part of Azerbaijan, because right now Azerbaijan is at war with Armenia over this tiny little contested area. And then it goes from footage of, like, dudes singing in the wilderness to just military propaganda of the president of Azerbaijan in, like, military uniform, giving speeches, and, like, planes flying, missiles shooting, soldiers marching. And I'm like, damn, this went from, like, my joke about cows and shit to Top Gun. Because that's all Top Gun really is.
Yeah, especially the original.
Yeah, and then it goes to the news, quote-unquote, which is just... more militaristic propaganda, but all the footage is of, like,
it's actual
countryside. It's just fields and blown up houses with someone talking about the war. And I just looked at my girlfriend. It's like, I'm still waiting for them to show, like, one intact building or, like, a city or something. And she was so mad.
Oh man, that's funny. Oh. I'm going to go on a slight tangent here, because we were talking about Ad Astra.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Brad Pitt as a producer. Okay. So I'm just going to start with Lost City of Z. He was a producer on Lost City of Z, Zed, Moonlight, Brad's Status for some reason, War Machine, Beautiful Boy, If Beale Street Could Talk, Vice,
Holy shit.
Ad Astra, The King, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Kajillionaire, Minari, Irresistible, like...
Oh, Minari is that Korean movie I was talking about that's getting a lot of awards buzz. Dude, Brad Pitt's got a hell of a producing track record. What the hell?
Yeah, like, someone was like, Brad Pitt is... Because he also produced 12 Years a Slave.
That's right.
Someone was... Yeah, he's, like, a big fan of David Michôd, because he has War Machine and The King. But also, like, he's oddly very interested in producing movies that have, like, a really strong representational slant, or, like,
Well, I mean, he seems to be bankrolling Barry Jenkins.
Now, well, did he do... Yeah, that's right, because he did Moonlight. Yeah. I wonder how much of it, because, like, Vice and The Big Short, he produced both of them. So I wonder how much of it is just, like, he will, if he likes you as a director... he will produce a couple of your movies, and that because I think Barry Jenkins is now doing the live action Lion King 2, because he needs money to make.
Oh my god! Oh no! All right, I don't want to talk. That's so depressing. I don't want to talk about movies anymore.
Well, if anyone's interested in listening to our other episodes of podcast where we do talk about If Beale Street Could Talk in a couple of them, where would they go?
They can go to Apple, Stitcher, and YouTube. Please get Barry Jenkins to stop whatever this is. What the hell, man? That's like... Are you shitting me? Live action Lion King 2 as if the first one wasn't bad enough, and they're getting Barry Jenkins to do it? What a colossal waste. Fuck! This is why Disney's the worst. This is why they're so fucking terrible, is they do shit like this. Barry Jenkins is a genius. He should be making, like, real movies, not, let's do live action CGI Lion King 2, because First of all, who likes Lion King 2? That movie stinks. I didn't even like it, and I was a kid. Kids like everything. And they're getting Barry fucking
my fiance
Jenkins
loves
to
that
direct
movie.
You're joking, right? This is a joke. This has all been a prank just to get me angry.
I wish. Let me see. Where's the article? No, you can on his Twitter. He said it on his Twitter.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Let's see here. Brent Lang from September 29th. Oh, Rebecca Rubin, Brent Lang write for Variety. The Lion King follow-up in the works with director Barry Jenkins. Oh, you know how they can redeem... Wait. You know how they can redeem this, though? You make it like a regular Barry Jenkins film that has a lot of, like... you have, like, where you have, like, the musical sections of, like, music is playing over a montage. And then instead of CGI lions... you do what they did with the Lion King stage show and just dress them up in like really elaborate. That's what they should do for this. No CG. No CG.
Okay, per Wikipedia, and it's cited.
Yep.
The next major film Jenkins is set to direct is a prequel to the CGI remake of Disney's The Lion King that primarily concerns the coming of age of Mufasa. Kill me.
I mean, it's
just fuck it. We all deserve to be annihilated by the plague and nuclear war.
Maybe it'll be like Infernal Affairs 3 where it like jumps back and forth, or Infernal Affairs 2 where it's like the first half is a prequel, the second half is a sequel, or Godfather Part 2. That would have been a smarter movie to reference. It'll be Godfather Part 2. But they just get get James Earl Jones to be the voice of Mufasa
or any
the whole
Wong
time.
Kar-wai movie. The first half is a prequel. The second half is a sequel. To what? I don't know.
It's not important.
Something.
You're asking the wrong questions.
You're asking those
questions of my movie.
You're asking the wrong questions. You should be asking, why is everyone so wistful and lonely? No, the real question is, why is Barry Jenkins directing a prequel to the god-awful CGI Lion King?
Directed by Jon Favreau. Yeah, I don't... It's so perplexing, and the only thing I can think of... Because he's not a writer or a producer of it, according to Wikipedia. The only thing I can think of is that, like for his career, for example, he gets a massive payday. He gets to use tech that he would never get a hold of based off of the budget level that he normally has for movies. And then he can use that experience in the next movie that he makes for whatever else he's doing. And maybe he's always been interested in directing a musical. You know, everyone wants to have
why
their
not
one
a good musical? Why something bad? We know this movie's gonna suck just because Disney's involved.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to have just helicoptered in pallets of cash.
Well, think about it. So Moonlight comes out in 2016. If Beale Street Could Talk comes out in 2018, probably made off of the good buzz from Moonlight and, won an Academy Award. For Disney, they like to hire former Academy Award winners to make movies in their system so that for film nerds, they can say, this was directed by this person who was nominated for an Academy Award or who did well. So they get like the air of prestige. It's hard to finance a movie. And Barry Jenkins might have been like looking for another project, working on a project, and he's like, I just can't get Brad Pitt. I can't get that Brad Pitt money right now. But this opportunity rolls around, and he's like, well, can I do this? And Disney's like, no, we want this person who's straight white male and horrible for it to do this movie, but we want you to do this movie. And he's like, is there anything else I can get? And they're like, no. And they're like, well, I'm going to pass. And they're like, oh, but we'll pay you $100 million. And it's like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it. I don't know if that's what happened. That's what I could see happening. Because, again, he's like, well, I want money, and I'm going to have to finance my next movie myself. Beale Street Could Talk. Budget, $12 million. This new Lion King prequel. Budget's going to be 10 times that amount. So, and Disney's trying to be, more diverse with all of their hires like this. It's like, oh, now is the time to capitalize on it if you can. And maybe, there is a slim chance that he can put out something that's like really good, but it's a really slim chance. But if you as the audience have any questions about this, podcast at underthewheels.com is where you can send us questions.
Or on Facebook and Twitter.
Ooh. Or YouTube in the comments section.
Or YouTube, yeah, in the comments.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? Maybe if there's enough traction, when that Lion King prequel comes out, we'll have enough people who can give us money on Patreon so that Gabe doesn't actually have to pay for a ticket to go see it, and we can just laugh at how upset he is the entire time while watching it. HBO Max, that's your cue. You know, if you sponsor us, we'd be happy to talk shit about other movies that we're not excited about from other studios. That I guess that would be a conflict of interest, wouldn't it?
I'll allow HBO Max to pay me to trash Disney. Because I'm already doing it for free.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Although they do sometimes get some of their movies so that, like, on HBO they can be like, see, we do have the popular movies. It's like the weird transition phase before Disney's just like, no, everything's on Disney Plus. Well, on that depressing note, you have anything else to add?
No. Just when I think the world of cinema cannot get more bleak, it does.
On that happy note, I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And you've just been Under the Wheels.
I've seen Twisted Pair, which is absolutely incredible. I saw Fateful Findings as well, or a good chunk of it, and it's really bad. It's so bad that I couldn't sit through it. But Twisted Pair is a masterpiece. Fateful Findings.
Okay. It's like he got better for Twisted Pair, and now he can't afford to make another movie.
No, not necessarily. I think Twisted Pair was probably his cheapest movie yet, and his most incoherent. But like his ideas are so over the top that it makes it really entertaining because he plays himself and his evil twin, and they have superpowers, and like there's CGI in these movies as opposed to the previous ones where there really isn't, and the CGI is gloriously awful. Like he has like a super jumping ability. So he'll jump from the foreground to the background of like a still photo.
And then there's like an explosion out of the window he just jumped from, and it's like, what? Why does this look so bad? Oh,
it's so good. Like, I recommend everyone, if you're able to gather with your friends and have a few drinks, watch Twisted Pair.
Oh.
I think Austin was considering buying it, but you can only buy it on Blu-ray for like $20, and he's like, I'm not spending $20 on Twisted Pair.
But you're directly financing Neal Breen, who needs the money to make more movies.
He's rich.
He's crazy. Yeah, but I think he's looking for investors. I don't know. Did you see the
rich people rules number 1? Never play with your own money.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I wonder if his real estate money is like starting to run dry. Can't collect from people right now in Nevada. Need to go find more people that I can leech money off of.
Finished.